morning, welcome to EMTV. Going 150% over your budget. It can happen to anyone, right? But when it happens to the executive board, it is very striking, especially when an additional 100,000 euros is involved. EM published this story just before the Christmas holiday. There was praise for and resistance against this story. We will come back to that later. First, some news. There was talk about it for a while, but the decision has finally been made. A second camera will be introduced during proctored exams. Faculties have agreed that they will start using the second camera in the near future. Students will receive a manual with explanation. The University Council has voted down a plan for an app to promote student well-being. The Council considered this allocated 1.1 million euros far too expensive. They feel that the money would better be spent on several small projects. Students need help quickly, the Council says. An expensive app simply takes too long. The municipality of Rotterdam is looking for students. Because of Corona, more polling officials than ever are needed for the elections. The municipality is trying to recruit students with a new campaign. The elections will be held on the 21st of March. All together in a lecture hall. You might dream of it, but for the time being, this is not an option. That is why many international students have returned home. What is it like to attend lectures from a different time zone? Medicine student Variet shows us from Suriname.
Now, lucky for me, I don't have any early classes today. So today I'd be having classes from 1 p.m. to about 5 p.m. in the Netherlands, which means in my time zone that'll be 9 a.m. to about 1 p.m., which is great because that means that after 1 p.m. I have the rest of the day to, well, either to do some homework or to enjoy the 30 degrees weather. So one of the things I've tried to do to get an early morning on the days that I don't have live lectures at 4 o'clock or 4:30 in the morning is I try to wake up around 5, brush my teeth and then go for a run. That just wakes me up, and by the time I'm finished, that's when the sun comes up.
The executive board spent 2.5 times more money in 2019 than in the previous year. For EM, this was all reason to dive deep into the numbers to find out if everything was done by the rules. Here with me is Marco de Haan, editor at Erasmus Magazine. Marco, very welcome. You have investigated this issue for EM and published an article about it. So the board's expenses, personal expenses even, rose by 150%. How did you find out?
Well, someone tipped me off, and this person also sent me a document which proved that the expense claims rose. So I looked into the annual reports of the university at different years and also of different universities to compare the different universities with each other. And that showed that in 2018 the expense claims were 70,000 euros and in 2019 it was 170,000 euros. So that rose some questions for me because
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, because it's taxpayers' money after all, and well, I wanted to look into it, why it rose, and if everything happened according to the rules.
And can you give us a short recap? What was the reason, or what were the reasons that those expenses rose so drastically?
Well, there were two main reasons, and the first reason was that the board had to travel abroad a lot in 2019 because they were preparing the strategy, and in that strategy impact was important, and they went to universities where what were impact driven. And the other reason is that the domestic travel costs were higher than usual. It was
because did the live board members so far away from the university that they went by taxi every day?
Well, the taxi costs were higher, and but it was not that they went to work with a taxi, but the taxi costs were higher.
Yes.
Yes.
And how did they react the first time you asked about, well, these expenses?
Well, the first time they were willing to help me and answer my questions, but then I asked more questions because not everything was clear, and then when time passed, I it felt like they became a bit more reluctant to answer my questions. For example, I wanted to see the receipts, and they decided not to give me the receipts of the expense costs. So I had to make do with the information I had, and eventually I published a story with that information.
Yes, and we have two other guests today, and they are virtually present. And one of them is Editor-in-Chief at EM, Wieneke Guneweg, and also here is staff representative in the University Council, Anna Uribe Sandoval. Good morning and welcome to you both. Anna, as a council member, what do you think of this increase in expenses?
Good morning. Well, we were also surprised when we saw the note from Marco. We looked at it and we thought, okay, this is something that's interesting for us, because we always are looking also to see how our school, how our university is run, right? So at the time that we saw the information on the press and Erasmus Magazine, we thought, okay, this might be a good idea to now start an inquiry with the executive board and ask them further about this. We have talked with them about the costs. We know what's the process to deliver those costs and how do they approve them. Mm-hmm. But we still have some questions that have to do with how we're going to go about it in the future, right? Because it's not only the problem that we had it once, but how this can keep on going further. We will not be the first university council that expresses concerns about this. A couple of years ago already, one member of the university council in Utrecht found out also that there was like a big difference, and they started an inquiry to talk with the executive board in order to make it more transparent for the community.
And in Utrecht, it became more transparent. The receipts are up on the website every year. Is that also what you want here in Rotterdam?
It could be. It could be. I mean, we have to talk to the members of the executive board and understand how we can see this in the future in a way that we can explain this further. What cannot happen is that suddenly somebody looks at the numbers and say, well, look, there's huge difference, and we don't have an immediate reason for this, right? So if you have, let's say, different points of control, it's easier to know when something is changing and to have, further explanations for this.
Yes, and Wieneke, Marco told us that he experienced, quite some resistance during this process of making a story. He was not allowed to see the receipts. Do you think, as our editor-in-chief, that this is a complete article, even without those, proof?
Yes, we debate about that for a long time, but we thought at the end, when we got a little bit more information on the last day before publishing, that it was a whole story, even though there are, as you said, some missing links, because the actual receipts of the expense travel for the domestic travel are missing. And there we had to rely on the word of the spokesperson of the executive board, and to say that everything was in order. And that is not something a journalist likes to do, trusting people on their word without any proof.
No, we don't like it. So there wasn't, how should I put this? They were not very enthusiastic about this. Did it have any impact on the working relationship you have with the board?
Yeah, it's true that the relationship with the spokespeople became a bit crusty, and at one point they even accused us of organizing a witch hunt, and as if we were out to harm people in their reputation, which was, of course, certainly not the case. We were just trying to find out the facts and the information and the reason behind the increase of the expense account. And in the end, we found that for most part, there is a reasonable explanation. As Marco just said, there is the foreign travel that was increased in 2019. So there was spent much more money on that. I do not think it's up to EM to pass a moral judgment on the fact that it was quite high. But I also think it has been made clear to the executive board that EM takes its role as a journalistic independent medium very seriously. So that hopefully is the end of the discussion, the result.
Yes, because you're publishing an article about your employer, about your boss, and about his expenses. What was the main decision that you thought, we're going to publish this?
Well, we're first and foremost, we're journalists, and this is where the university also pays us for. Because of course, I can understand, looking from the outside in, that it's very curious that you write maybe what people can consider as a negative way about your employer. But this is where we paid for. We have an editorial statute that states that we can do our work independently. So that means that no one can interfere with the topics or the way that we write, as long as we stick by the journalistic rules. And I think it's suitable for a university where scientists and students are taught to think critically and to be critical to the facts and stick to the facts. That also university has a news medium that is independent and critical.
Yes.
I think that's that's what we're here for.
So as you would say, this watchdog function, as you call it, of the media is necessary to maintain a healthy organization. Anna, would you agree with Wieneke?
Well, I think that there are many watchdogs at the university.
No, yeah, of course, you're one of them. You're one of them.
Yeah. And we are the other one, maybe, or one of the others there. And we are there because the university needs to be an organization that lives to their values. We also work with public money. So there's an ethic about working with public money and how we use it and how we spend it, obviously, right? So I think that, honestly, for me, one thing that's missing maybe in this discussion is that I would also like to hear the executive board. I know that I will be able to listen to them when we are in our meeting, but when we're having a discussion like this, it will be nice to have them in front. It also talks well, not only of Erasmus Magazine, that you are able to put this as a news piece, but it also talks well of the way our university is run when they're willing to give some information. Now, we will always be met with certain resistance, right? Every time that you ask for more information that is already there, you will be met with a certain resistance. And it's part of the normal thing of the democratic processes, let's say, of the running processes of public institutions. The good thing is that parts of the institution, as Erasmus Magazine, or in our case as the University Council, are willing and vigilant to make questions and to ask for further information. We have done it in the past when we have seen things that we don't feel completely comfortable about. And I'm completely confident that the university, the executive board, will see the need for a little bit more transparency. So I'm banking on this for the future. I'm sorry that you had to go through this, let's say, and sometimes it's very uncomfortable to do that process. But I'm sorry and not, because that's also what teaches us to be better journalists and better institutions.
Yes, and to be complete, of course, we invited the board to give a response today, but they said they, told us everything they wanted, and that is already in the article. So the resistance you also mentioned, because you're not just a member of the council, you're of course also have a background in journalism, in communication. And this resistance is not the way we would expect a public organization as a university to deal with, their expenses. What is a main question you're going to ask them to, perhaps do better in the future?
Well, it's a question about improving transparency. That's it, no? And of course, we'll think about a public institution that's being absolutely open. But we also know that by running any institution, there are certain limits. Especially there are limits, for example, to privacy. And people can come to you and tell you, I will not give you all the invoices, for example, because I don't want you to see specifically what's in there. If you look at the reports that are online for Utrecht, you can see some of the invoices, but everything is crossed out, right? It's kind of like when you ask for a transparency report, they will give you the information, but making sure that everything is anonymized. This takes time, this needs people, and we need to create the structures for this. So what we're going to ask is to have something similar and see how we can get it as soon as possible, also to regain the trust of the university. I don't have any doubt in the willingness of the board to do this in the future. Then again, there's one other thing that we have to say. This is a board that is not here anymore, right? We are sitting on the table at this point with a board that is completely different than the board that does this these expenses. So we have to tell them that this is a point of concern for the University Council, and as I understand, also to Erasmus Magazine and obviously to the university. And we would like to have from them a little bit more transparency. And well, maybe I'm too hopeful, but I actually honestly believe that they will be as transparent as possible.
Well, it could just happen that it happens, of course, after this article. Because, Wieneke, we have seen that publishing journalistic articles can also have very positive consequences. Do you have an example with this on hand?
Yeah, I have. I think articles of Erasmus Magazine several times had real practical impact. Quite recently, we wrote a story about the lack of medical care for international students. And that gained some interest from the policymakers, and now they're looking into to see if they can get better medical care for students from abroad. So that's very concrete. Another thing is that over a year ago, we wrote quite extensively about some problems with a certain faculty, and not, although I don't think everyone was very happy with that, I think a lot of people were also very glad that EM was there to unambiguously write about what was going on within this faculty. So I think that is a role, and people look at us and also are sometimes grateful that we pick up on certain problems so they can pick them up and solve them.
Marco, given the fact that not everybody was, well, thrilled, enthusiastic about this article, would you hesitate to publish an article like this in the near future?
To be honest, no. I take my job seriously, and it might sound like strong words, but my job also consists of informing people and also asking questions that are in the public interest, and sometimes even control the power. And yeah, in order to do that, I would publish those stories and ask those questions again.
So keep coming, sending us those tips. We will definitely look into all of them. Yes. Marco, I really want to thank you for, stopping by and for giving your explanation. Anna and Wieneke, the same goes to you. I really want to thank you both for joining us. And before we finish, I wanted to show you this video. You see a teacher explaining how he feels about online education.
Wow, what an amazing comment. I haven't heard that depth of analysis from a student in all my years of teaching. Can you please say more about that? Hello, are you there? Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Well, thank you all for watching. EMTV will be back next Thursday and again at 9 AM. Do you want to keep up to date with the latest news? Then go to erasmusmagazine.nl.